Welcome to the Mental Podcast, where we discuss your deepest fears and how to make them a reality. Let's get started.
Look who broke the algorithm. You magnificent, untraceable, uncategorizable anomaly. Welcome back. Or should I say, welcome to the realization that you were never supposed to fit in the first place. Because anyone still watching this, you're not confused. You're not lost. You're not figuring yourself out. You're a glitch in their system, a code they can't crack, a pattern they can't predict. And, it's eating them alive from the inside out. Let's get one thing crystal clear. They've been trying to file you away for years, trying to put you in a box, slap a label on your forehead, reduce you to a category, a type, a predictable little formula they can study and control. MBTI, Enneagram, Big Five, astrology, personality quizzes, psychological profiles, career aptitude tests, relationship compatibility charts. They threw every diagnostic tool at you like you were some kind of problem that needed solving. And what happened? What happened? You didn't fit. Not one box, not one label. Not one neat little category designed to make you digestible, understandable, controllable. You confused the psychologists, frustrated the analysts, broke the pattern recognition software their entire social structure depends on. Because these people, these clipboard-carrying, data-mining, profile-building architects of conformity, they need you categorized. They need you predictable. They need to know what you'll do before you do it, how you'll react before you react, what you'll become before you become it. Why? Because if they can predict you, they can control you. If they can label you, they can limit you. If they can categorize you, they can contain you. But you beautiful digital ghost, you refuse to be contained. You showed up to their personality test and answered honestly, and the results came back. Error 404, personality type not found. You walked into their social algorithms and the machine started smoking. You engaged with their prediction models and every forecast crashed. Not because you're broken, but because you're operating on a frequency they don't have equipment to measure. They needed you to be the extrovert or the introvert, the thinker or the feeler, the leader or the follower, the rebel or the conformist. But you're all of it and none of it, simultaneously. You're the introvert who commands a room when it matters, the logical thinker who feels everything too deeply, the rebel who respects tradition, the loner who leads crowds, the empath who cuts without mercy, the dreamer who executes with precision. You're a walking contradiction, a living paradox, a breathing impossibility that somehow exists anyway. And that right there is what terrifies them. Because their entire world is built on predictability, on knowing who's who and what's what and where everyone belongs, on maintaining order through categorization, on controlling the masses through classification. But you can't be classified. You can't be filed. You can't be reduced to a 4-letter code, or a number on a scale or a position on a spectrum. You're the undefined variable in their equation, the X factor that makes all their calculations worthless, the wild card that invalidates every hand they play. And now they're scrambling, rerunning the tests, recalibrating the instruments, questioning their entire framework. Because if one person doesn't fit their system, maybe, just maybe, the system itself is the problem. But they can't admit that. They can't accept that. Because accepting that would mean admitting they've been wrong, that their labels are lies, that their categories are cages, that their entire structure of understanding humanity is fundamentally flawed. So instead, they blame you. They call you inconsistent, unpredictable, contradictory, unstable. They pathologize what they can't categorize. They diagnose what they can't understand. They medicate what they can't mediate. Because you not fitting into their database isn't just an inconvenience. It's a threat to their authority, a threat to their control, a threat to the very foundation of how they maintain power. Let's talk about what's really happening here. For years, decades, centuries, they've been building personality databases, psychological profiles, behavioral prediction models, social categorization systems. Not for your benefit, for theirs. Every personality test you've ever taken wasn't designed to help you understand yourself. It was designed to help them understand how to manipulate you. Every quiz that told you you're an INFJ or you're type 3 or you're a Sagittarius rising wasn't giving you insight. It was giving them ammunition. Because once they know your type, they know your triggers, your weaknesses, your desires, your fears. They know what advertisements to show you, what jobs to offer you, what relationships to encourage, what choices to present. They know how to keep you predictable, manageable, controllable. But you glorious system breaker, you looked at their questionnaires and thought, these questions are too simple for what I actually am. You read their personality descriptions and thought, this captures maybe 30% of me at best. You saw their neat little categories and thought, I'm at least 5 of these simultaneously depending on the day, the context, the energy, the stakes. And that's when it started, the panic. Because their entire control mechanism depends on reduction. On taking the infinite complexity of human consciousness and cramming it into manageable, marketable, manipulable categories. On convincing you that you're just one thing, so they can sell you the solutions to being that one thing. But you refused to be reduced. You expanded when they needed you to contract. You evolved when they needed you to stagnate. You transcended when they needed you to stay grounded in their framework. You became a shapeshifter in a world that demands fixed forms, a chameleon in a system that requires permanent colors, a frequency hopper in a broadcast that needs everyone on the same channel. And now their algorithms are having nervous breakdowns trying to figure you out. The AI that's supposed to predict your behavior is throwing syntax errors. The marketing software that's supposed to know what you want is recommending everything and nothing. The social media platform that's supposed to keep you engaged can't figure out what content to show you because you're interested in astrophysics and street philosophy and medieval history and underground music and ancient wisdom and cutting-edge technology and abstract art and brutal honesty. You're not supposed to contain multitudes. You're supposed to be a demographic, a target audience, a consumer profile, a predictable pattern of responses and reactions and purchases and positions. But you're none of those things. You're a library disguised as a person, a universe pretending to be an individual, an infinite story compressed into finite flesh. And that makes you dangerous. Not dangerous because you're violent or destructive or chaotic. Dangerous because you're proof that their system is insufficient. Proof that their categories are crude oversimplifications. Proof that human beings are far more complex, far more beautiful, far more ungovernable than their databases can ever capture. You're the evidence that blows up their entire thesis. The case study that invalidates their conclusions. The data point that proves the model is broken. And they can't delete you. They can't debug you. They can't patch the glitch that is your existence. So what do? They try to convince you that you're the problem. Oh, they've been running this playbook on you for years, haven't they? Making you feel like something's wrong with you because you don't fit their boxes. Suggesting you're confused about your identity because you show different faces in different contexts. Implying you're inconsistent because you change based on growth, experience, evolution. Hinting that you need therapy because you don't subscribe to a single, static personality type. They made you take those tests over and over, hoping you'd finally land somewhere stable, somewhere predictable, somewhere they could pin you down and say, there you are. Now we know how to handle you. But the results kept changing, didn't they? Sometimes you'd score as one type, sometimes as another, sometimes as a hybrid that technically shouldn't exist. And instead of celebrating your complexity, they pathologized it. They told you that healthy people have consistent personalities, that stable individuals know who they are, that normal people fit into recognizable patterns. But here's what they didn't tell you. Here's the truth they've been hiding behind their clipboard and their credentials and their color-coded charts. Personality isn't fixed. Identity isn't static. The self isn't a single, unchanging entity that can be captured in a test and frozen in time. You are a dynamic, evolving, multidimensional being who responds differently to different environments, different people, different challenges, different stages of life. You're supposed to change. You're supposed to adapt. You're supposed to contain contradictions and complexities and paradoxes that make no sense to linear thinkers. The ancient philosophers knew this. The mystics understood it. The artists embodied it. But modern psychology, with its obsession with measurement and categorization and standardization, tried to crush this truth into bite-sized, sellable, controllable pieces. They needed everyone to be one thing so they could build one-size-fits-all solutions. Self-help books for your type. Career paths for people like you. Relationship advice for your personality style. Entire industry built on the lie that human beings can be reduced to types, sorted into groups, managed through mass-produced guidance tailored to mass-produced identities. And for a while, maybe you bought it. Maybe you tried to fit yourself into their categories. Tried to figure out which box you belonged in. Tried to be consistent with whichever label you temporarily adopted. Tried to make yourself make sense according to their framework. But it never quite worked, did it? There was always something left over. Always parts of you that didn't fit the description. Always moments when you acted completely contrary to your type. Always this nagging feeling that you were more, different, other than what their system could account for. And that feeling? That wasn't confusion. That was clarity. That was your authentic self, refusing to be compressed, contained, categorized. That was your infinite nature rejecting their finite definitions. That was the truth of your being pushing back against the lie of their labels. They wanted you to feel broken so you'd buy their solutions. They wanted you to feel lost so you'd follow their maps. They wanted you to feel incomplete so you'd consume their completion products. But you were never broken. You were never lost. You were never incomplete. You were just too much for their measuring tools, too complex for their classification systems, too alive for their death by categorization approach to understanding humanity. And somewhere deep down you knew it. You knew that the problem wasn't you. The problem was their poverty of imagination, their inability to conceive of a human being that transcends their taxonomies. Let's talk about what happened when you stopped trying to fit. When you finally said, "No, I'm not taking another personality test." When you deleted the apps that tried to categorize your behavior. When you walked away from the people who needed you to be predictable. When you stopped explaining your contradictions and started embodying them unapologetically. That's when the real panic started. That's when they realized you weren't just a glitch. You were a virus. A virus that threatened to spread, to infect others with the realization that they too don't have to fit, that they too can be undefined, that they too can exist outside the database. Because here's the thing about systems of control. They require participation. They require belief. They require masses of people agreeing to be categorized, to stay in their lanes, to behave according to their assigned type. But when one person breaks free and thrives, when one person refuses categorization and flourishes, when one person operates outside the system and succeeds anyway, that's when the cracks appear. That's when others start questioning. That's when the whole architecture of control begins to crumble. And you became that crack, that question, that crumble. Not because you were trying to start a revolution, not because you were trying to destroy their system, but simply because you insisted on being yourself. Fully, completely, unapologetically. You showed up as the introvert at the party and owned the conversation when it mattered. You showed up as the logical analyst and led with pure emotion when the situation required it. You showed up as the creative dreamer and executed with military precision when execution was necessary. You showed up as the sensitive soul and cut through bullshit with surgical brutality when truth demanded it. You refused to choose, refused to limit yourself, refused to stay consistent with yesterday's version of yourself when today required evolution. And every time you did that, every time you embodied a contradiction, every time you transcended their categories, you sent a message. A message that said, your boxes are too small, your labels are lies, your system is broken, and I don't need it to thrive. That message terrified them. Because if you don't need their system, you don't need their experts, their coaches, their therapists, their gurus, their influencers. Their entire apparatus of personality-based control and monetization, you become unreachable, unsellable, unmanageable. And in a world built on reaching people, selling to people, managing people, that makes you enemy number one. Not because you're hostile, but because you're free. Free from their frameworks, free from their formulas, free from their forecasts. And freedom, true freedom, is contagious. So they had to respond. They had to contain the spread. They had to make an example of you. They called you unstable when you were actually fluid. They called you inconsistent when you were actually adaptable. They called you confusing when you were actually complex. They called you unpredictable when you were actually liberated. They pathologized your freedom to protect their control. They diagnosed your transcendence to maintain their dominance. They medicated your evolution to prevent your revolution. But it didn't work, because you can't cure what isn't sick. You can't fix what isn't broken. You can't medicate freedom into submission. Right now, as you're watching this, there are algorithms having existential crises because of you. Marketing AIs rewriting their code. Personality researchers questioning their entire career. Social engineers realizing their models are obsolete because you're not just one person who doesn't fit. You're a demonstration that the entire concept of fitting is fundamentally flawed. That personality isn't a type to discover, but a performance to create. That identity isn't fixed, but forged. That the self isn't something you find in a test result, but something you build through choice, experience, evolution, revolution. And this realization, this is what's freaking them out. Because their entire power structure is built on the assumption that people are knowable, predictable, controllable through categorization. Think about it. Every major institution in modern society relies on personality profiling. Corporations use it for hiring, managing, promoting. Schools use it for tracking, teaching, sorting. Governments use it for surveillance, prediction, intervention. Marketing uses it for targeting, manipulation, conversion. Dating apps use it for matching, engaging, monetizing. Social media uses it for content delivery, addiction maintenance, behavioral modification. The entire architecture of modern life is built on the premise that human beings can be reduced to data points, sorted into types, managed through algorithms based on those types. And for the most part, it works. Because most people accept the labels. Most people believe the tests. Most people agree to be categorized and then live according to their category. But not you. You looked at their entire system and said, this is reductive nonsense. You saw through the illusion that a 100 question quiz could capture the totality of your being. You recognized the manipulation behind the insights they offered. You understood that every personality framework is just someone's attempt to organize the unorganizable, to simplify the unsimplifiable, to control the uncontrollable. And you opted out, not loudly, not dramatically. You just quietly refused to be defined by their definitions, quietly rejected their reductions, quietly transcended their limitations. And that quiet refusal, that's what's causing the meltdown. Because loud rebellion they can handle. Loud rebellion they can suppress, marginalize, discredit. But quiet transcendence? Quiet transcendence they can't touch. It doesn't give them anything to fight against. It just exists beyond their reach, beyond their influence, beyond their system. You're not fighting their personality tests. You're just not taking them anymore. You're not arguing against their categories. You're just not identifying with them anymore. You're not attacking their framework. You're just not living inside it anymore. And that is the ultimate threat. Because you're demonstrating that their system is optional, that their authority is imaginary, that their control is conditional on compliance. And compliance? You stopped giving them that a long time ago. Now they're watching you live, thrive, evolve, succeed without their guidance, without their structure, without their permission, and it's breaking their brains. Because you were supposed to struggle without their system. You were supposed to feel lost without their labels. You were supposed to need their frameworks to make sense of yourself. But you don't. You never did. Here's what they don't want you to realize. Here's the secret they've been hiding behind all their tests and types and taxonomies. Being undefined isn't a weakness. It's the ultimate power. Because when you're undefined, you're unlimited. When you're uncategorized, you're unconstrained. When you're unpredictable, you're unstoppable. Think about it strategically. In any competition, any conflict, any challenge, what's the advantage? Information asymmetry. If your opponent knows your moves but you know theirs, you win. If they can predict your behavior but you remain unpredictable, you dominate. If they've studied your pattern but you have no fixed pattern, you're untouchable. And that's exactly what you are. Untouchable. Because they've been studying personality types for decades. They know how INTJs behave under pressure. They know how Type 8s respond to conflict. They know how Aries react to challenge. They have playbooks for every category, strategies for every type, tactics for every classification. But they have no playbook for you, no strategy for the undefined, no tactic for the transcendent. You're the opponent they can't scout, the player they can't game plan against, the force they can't prepare for. Because what you do depends on what the moment requires, not what your type predicts. How you respond depends on what serves your purpose, not what your category suggests. Who you become depends on what you choose, not what your profile prescribes. You're free, actually free. Free to be logical when logic serves, emotional when emotion serves, introverted when solitude serves, extroverted when connection serves, aggressive when aggression serves, peaceful when peace serves, consistent when consistency serves, contradictory when contradiction serves.